Episode 27, Prioritizing Yourself and Your Marriage. As wives and as stay-at-home moms, it is so easy to put our needs on the back burner. With so many things that need to be done or need our attention, like kids and dishes and bills and birthdays, often our own well-being is cast to the side as a non-priority. And then one day we wake up and realize we're about to lose our marbles, and then we plunge ourselves into some me time to salvage what we can of our sanity. But then what about our husbands? There they are, diligently, silently, working away in the background, so strong and so independent. We don't really need a date night, right? We say to ourselves, we get along great. Thinking about doing special things for him also seems like a huge extra burden on an already stressed schedule. So what do we do? Is it possible to find the balance between prioritizing ourselves and our marriages? Amberlys Lambertsen is here today to tell us how it is possible to prioritize our own well-being while also strengthening our marriages. Okay, before we get started, a few little announcements. 1, this episode is brought to you by my freebie I created, How to Look So Good Without Makeup. It's top 20 tips to taking care of your natural skin so that you don't even need to put 1 ounce of makeup on. Okay, does that sound good to you? Sounds good to me. That's why I made it. So go to learnliveloveyourself.com/no makeup to get my top 20 tips for looking so good without makeup, because you're a busy woman and you deserve to let your face shine. Okay, second announcement. I am an idiot. I'm so mad. I had this amazing interview with Amberlys that you're going to listen to, but I was so caught up in the joy of everything that I forgot to switch the settings to my microphone, and so the whole thing was recorded on my dumb computer's audio recording system, which, it's still audible. You can still hear it. It just doesn't sound as crisp as I love my podcast episodes to be. So I ask 1, your forgiveness, and 2, please stick around. The content is killer, okay? Audio, not so great. Content, fantastic. All right? All right. And we're skipping the intro because this was super long already. So let's get straight into it. Amberlys, thank you so much.
Hey, Lindsay, I'm so excited to be here.
So let's start out with a little introduction. Tell us a bit about your background, your family, your husband, your kids, your education, and your Instagram online business.
Yeah, so I have been married. I'll start with about marriage since we're talking about marriage today. I've been married to my husband for just over 8 years. And actually this month is like our meet-iversary, I call it. It's the celebration of when we fell in love. So we've been together for 9 years. Well, I guess October. We'll pretend it's October already. 9 years, October. And we have 2 kids. My oldest is 4 and my youngest is 3. They are 16 months apart. I don't think we would necessarily recommend that to everyone. They are very busy. They are very fun. And they keep us busy. I do have a degree in family studies, and I am a provisionally certified family life educator, and I'm currently working towards getting my full certification. So you just have to get a certain number of work hours for that. And I run the site, A Prioritized Marriage, and it started kind of, I think, how a lot of bloggers started. When I got engaged, I started writing our story, and it just was like a personal journal, like, here's the fun things we did for date night, or here's what we did for this. And when I started my degree and started discovering that I really loved the marriage and family relationship education aspect of what I was doing, it kind of transitioned over into my blog, and it changed from a personal journal lifestyle blog. It used to be Life with Amberly and Joe into something that I could transform into a business moving forward and use to spread my message to anyone who could hear it. And so I've been a prioritized marriage for about 5 years now. And I just love sharing different ways that couples in all stages of life can make their marriage a priority. And I just love sharing those like easy things that couples can do and show them that it's possible, no matter what you have going in your life, to make your spouse a priority and to essentially put your marriage first and build that relationship. So that is where my passion is.
I'm grateful for you. When I stumbled upon your Instagram account, I thought, where has this been all my life? All my married life, which I was thinking, this is really good information to prioritize our marriage. It's kind of just like, I don't know, for me, something I take for granted.
Yes, exactly. And I have been there in my relationship. So I write as much for myself as I write for other people.
So that's the other question I have for you. I wanted to take a look into your history. Even though you've been doing this blog since you were engaged, you said, I want to know, how have your interactions and your relationship with your husband evolved over time?
So I would say you would think like the easiest time to prioritize your relationship is like when you're dating and newly married, right? You've got all this time to spend together. And I think kind of how you said, like you take it for granted, like we took that time for granted. I had just barely started school when we met and started dating. And so I remember that every night I would rush home from work and I would get my homework done so that when my then boyfriend, my now husband, was done with work because he worked a little bit later shift, I could give him all of my attention. And then slowly, as we got married, like it just became every night he'd come home and I'd have spent that time that I was home by myself, like cleaning the house or making this elaborate meal. And then I would have to spend all that time after he got home doing homework. And it started to turn into like we used to do all these fun date nights and things like that. And we got to a point where every night was sitting on the couch watching our current Netflix binge, eating snacks or food or whatever. And then when date night would roll around, we'd say, oh, let's go get takeout. And then we'd come home and do the exact same thing. And so I think we started taking it for granted. When we were dating, we really tried. I think everyone, like you will do whatever, you will say no to whatever to just have time with that special person. And so I think after having kids, I realized like just how much I needed that. And we don't take that time for granted anymore. And it is harder to find that time. But when we do have it, we make the most of it because we know that we're not going to get that quality time. And if we don't make the most of that time that we've got a babysitter and we're out on date night, then we're going to have to wait till next month or whatever. So it's definitely changed over time. And we definitely had that point in our relationship where we weren't really doing what we could to work on it. And I think through the stuff that I learned through school and just books that I've read and watching other couples, I've just learned what I need to do to make my marriage a priority. And even now we're not perfect. Like I'll find times where different seasons of life, it could be a week or a month or, a year or a couple days where we just haven't put each other first, and I can tell, and we just have to refocus. So I wouldn't say that we're perfect at it, and it's something we constantly are having to change, and with each season and stage of life, we have to find a new way to make that happen.
So what I want to know is, did you guys come to the realization together that, okay, we need to up the game? Or was it one of you who realized it first? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'll be completely honest. I think I'm the one who usually is like, I'm not okay with where things are at. Mostly because my husband he's just a very simple guy and he's completely happy with sitting and watching Netflix every night, and because I've always planned the date nights. And so I think he just, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And so I'm usually the one who says, hey, we need to do something different. And so we'll either sit down together and decide what we're going to do, or he'll like plan some date or something, or I'll say, hey, let's do this different. And just start to be more intentional about it. But I think it's probably usually me. And I think that's just because that's like my love language. That's my nature. That's just who I am.
And so that leads me to my next question, which I think a lot of women will relate to what you just said, that like, yeah, it is in our nature to kind of feel like those things are lacking if they're not there. What does it look like
Like, what are the signs that you can see that you said you can tell when you're not putting each other first? What does that look like?
I start to notice that our relationship is all business. And I say this all the time to people, but like if your relationship becomes completely on like the parenting or managing your household or managing the money, like those marriage business side of things that you do together, rather than your romantic relationship, that's when you want to make a change. And that's when I think I can tell when all of our conversations are becoming about the money or the kids or the house projects or our schedules, or what did you do at work today? What did you do at school today? That kind of thing, that we need to carve out that time, and that we've gotten into a stage of life where things have gotten busier and we're not taking that time to prioritize, and we have to make that time. Yeah, so it just becomes like that business, or I feel like we haven't I don't know, like if we haven't been intimate in a while, or if we haven't been on a real date in a while, or if we haven't just sat and held hands, or I think another thing I always think of is like, when was the last time I laughed with my husband? Like, mm-hmm. I don't know, that might seem silly, but it's something I've been thinking about this last week, and goes along with a blog post that I'm writing for this week. But like, when was the last time we had fun together that didn't revolve around something the kids did, that we laughed about something that wasn't the kids, to where like we need to go back to the core of our relationship.
It's kind of like a dagger to me, because I realize that's where I'm at right now. I mean, we've been so busy. My husband's trying to do a career change, and I've got, this podcast just takes up loads of my time. And so a lot of nights are him sitting doing an online course next to me while I sit and do podcast work, and we're like, yeah, it's quality time because our legs are touching, maybe.
I hear you, because my husband is doing some classes right now, and so he's got like 2 hours of homework to do every night, and I'm like, oh good, I can work on the blog. And so we're in that same part where like we've had a busy summer and now we're jumping into a totally new routine, and so I'm like, okay, we've got to shift and find somewhere that we can put some time for our marriage.
So, as women, why do you think it's easier for us to sometimes prioritize our marriage over prioritizing ourselves?
I think back to when I was first married, and I think I said this, that like I'd come home from work and I would spend time cleaning the house and making it look perfect for my husband to get home, and making this big dinner, and I just felt like I had like this duty, or that I was like wanting to live up to some grand expectation I had for myself. I think part of it's our expectations we put on ourselves. Part of it is like culture. And I think part of it is just like our nurturing. I think every woman, and I've heard this from talking to so many people about this, that we all feel like we have to take care of everyone before ourselves. Like we have to say yes to everyone else. We need to take care of our family's needs, and we feel guilty if we try and take care of ourselves. And so I think that guilt makes it easier to prioritize everything else above ourselves. And just, I don't know, I think a lot of it is culture and just expectations that have been put into our minds.
So almost all of us probably have a hard time trying to find that balance between prioritizing our spouse and prioritizing our families. How do we find that balance? Do you have any tips for us to be able to give ourselves some slack and like say it's okay for me to take some me time right now?
Yeah. I think, I don't know, that everyone always says that term like balance is just elusive. And I think that's probably true, because I feel like it's like a constant teeter-totter in my life with like 50 teeter-totter sides. I don't know. A seesaw, whichever ones those are. But I had a friend once tell me that for her, she thinks about the needs of the institution. So when you have like a brand new newborn baby, they are completely dependent on you, and they're going to come first, we were in the middle of date night one time, and our baby was colicky and screaming, and I had to feed her for an hour of date night. We were at home playing Mario Kart. That was our at-home date night, because she was premature, and so we weren't going out as much because we weren't having as many people babysitter. And so I sat and played Mario Kart one-handed and fed her with the other hand.
That's awesome.
And I felt like I was like And by the end, I was like, okay, can't play this game anymore. This is just frustrating. Let's just go watch Netflix. And I remember just being so frustrated with that because I was like, I'm really trying to make my husband a priority. I'm really trying to do this, but this baby is making it hard. And sometimes your kids need that. And sometimes you need that. This weekend I was really sick and I just had to put myself first and say, you know, I need you to do this, this, and this. And I wasn't like demanding, and he did like the laundry probably because he wanted clean clothes and there were no clean clothes because I hadn't gotten to the laundry. And I was like, thank you so much for doing the laundry. That was on my to-do list and I can't get out of bed. And so I had this, and those are obviously like kind of extreme examples. But when my friend said that to me, I thought it was like eye-opening that like if your marriage is really struggling, then you should put everything else aside and give your marriage that extra attention. And obviously still not like, you're still going to take care of your kids and feed your kids. And you're not going to be like, sorry, kids, I don't have time for you.
Yeah.
But I think that's like a good example of how to do it, because nobody's ever just going to be like, sorry, kids, can't do that. But we might say, sorry, husband, I can't go on a date night. You know what I mean? Or sorry, I don't have time to hold hands with you. Or sorry, self, we don't have time to go do that workout. Or sorry, self, we don't have time for a quiet moment, or something like that. And so I think it's just being aware of and obviously like in an ideal situation, our time would be balanced across everything. And I think that still is possible in some stages and at some points, but I think there's going to be a lot of times when something in your life is going to need you more, whether it's you have a work deadline or a school deadline, or your marriage is really struggling, or you have a sick kid or really need to focus on your kids, or your mental health is struggling. And it's just shifting those priorities while not giving up on everything else. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think we want to be kind of all in. We want to make sure that we're checking all the boxes. And so when, at least I'll speak for myself, when I'm not, it makes me either feel one of two ways, which is one is to work harder, like be crazier and try and get more stuff done when I feel like I'm not doing everything I should be or want to be, or the opposite end of the spectrum, which is just to be apathetic and say like, forget it, like
Yeah.
everything's going to go to pot right now because I can't keep this up. So what are some clues we can look for to notice if we are imbalanced in our life? Like, we want to be able to notice these things before we get to the point of, just giving up on everything, which we wouldn't do, but, we don't want to crash so hard. We want to be able to try and catch ourselves before. So do you have any clues or things we can look for to try and combat that?
So let me share a little bit of my story. So in the beginning of 2018, so like a year and a half ago, I realized that I didn't like who I was. I was really struggling. I was always frustrated. I felt like I was always yelling at my family. I felt like my house was falling apart and I didn't have time for anything. And I felt like I was doing everything. Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
I have no time to get what I've done, but I'm doing everything. And I really decided to make that year like the year of me. And I ended up quitting my job and staying home with my kids and getting a different part-time job that I love. But what really was like the big game changer for me, and I realized it's not going to be the same for everyone, but it was like the big like awakening moment. Like I knew I needed to focus on myself and do stuff for myself. But I ended up so it's been about a year in July that I was diagnosed with anxiety. And my doctor put me on medication and I started going to like a therapist, and it's like very mild. But I started to realize and really started to reflect on myself and realized how much I had lost myself. And I always said this, that like I'd lost myself in my marriage, my family, my job, my kids, and it wasn't of any fault of their own. That I was giving them my all and I wasn't giving myself anything. And so what I really found is that when I started, focusing on myself, and I started with like the very basics, which was like taking my pill every day and getting enough sleep and making sure that I ate at a decent time every day and wasn't just like, eating whenever I was like, oh, I forgot to eat breakfast today.
Yes.
And like taking my vitamins, like the very basic survival things that I started to feel better. And then I started adding more things in. And that's when I started saying no to people and like asking for help and, you know, telling my husband, I really need a clean house right now for my sanity. Please take the kids somewhere for 2 hours. And I don't want to see any of you for 2 hours. And I started to feel guilty, but I started to realize that once I was like that better version of myself, I gave my best self to everyone else. I wasn't as prone to like be angry or anything like that. And so that was like the key for me. And that's like this summer, I had the same situation where there were so many things going on and my routine was changing so much and we were doing so much that I started to realize that like I was going, and I was struggling again. And so I had to just step back and take some time for myself and figure that out. And I think like on that same note, like if my house is a total disaster, I know that I'm putting too much somewhere else. Either I'm going out with friends too much, or I am working too much, or I would say we're having too much family fun, but I don't think that's a thing. But then I need to like take a day and like really focus on my house and not do anything else. And if I'm feeling totally disconnected with my husband, and like I said earlier, like when was the last time we held hands? When was the last time we laughed? When was the last time we kissed other than kissing goodbye? Or when was the last time we went on a date? Like when I'm starting to realize those things, that's when I need to take some time and spend more time with my spouse and, you know, leave the kids for a couple of nights or something like that. And then for my kids, and I think this is like the telltale sign for kids, is when they start, for me, it's like when my kids start acting up or when they start asking me to play all the time, that I realize that I'm saying no too much and I'm focusing too much on getting my work done and going on dates with my husband and doing fun things for me, or keeping my house clean, that I just need to set that all aside for a minute and do some fun things with my kids. So I think it kind of all is just, and I think you have to be willing to sit down and reflect on that. Otherwise, you're just going to be like, I just go. And I just like tread water and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And why can't I seem to catch, you know, a break? But if I like really just sit back and look, I can see what needs to change. So I think you have to be willing to sit back and see that and recognize that and accept it and make a change.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I want to say also, you have to be willing to be okay that you're not like something is suffering, you know, you can't sit there and internalize it and be like, oh, I'm horrible, you know, I'm a bad mom, I'm a bad wife because of how this has been. You have to be able to say, okay, I'm taking a step back. This doesn't say anything about me and who I am or like my worth. It's just, this is how life is right now. How can I be positive? How can I be like enthusiastic about embracing the challenge of trying to find balance again? Does that make sense? Like
yes, for sure.
not dwelling on the fact that you were quote unquote failing or that something's not quite right, but making it a more positive activity.
And I think it's just like we said, like seasons of life shift and they can shift day to day and they can shift week to week, or you know what I mean? And sometimes we just go with the flow without even realizing it. And so it's like you said, it's not us, it's just how life is. And that's when we realize that, that's when we're like, okay, we need to change something because what we've been doing is not going to work for this season of our life. And that's totally okay.
So my next question is this: if there's a woman out there who's listening to this and thinking, okay, this is where my life's at right now, but I don't think I can make a real change unless I sit down and talk to my husband about this, but I'm kind of worried about talking to him. You know, I don't want him to think that like I'm blaming him or that I think there's something wrong with us. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to have a conversation with their spouse about these topics of being balanced and prioritizing marriage and self?
It's hard. I don't know. I think that's a hard thing to like go into. I would say everyone that I have talked to who has gone into that saying like, hey, I need more time for us, or hey, I need more time for me. I don't think I've heard of a single husband who's, you know, just totally blown that off. Like, whatever, you're crazy, or I don't understand what, you know, I think we're fine. I mean, I think in the, like, the us aspect sometimes, but I think going in with it saying, like, hey, this is this is where I would like myself to be, and I'm really struggling with that. Would you be willing to help me? I think asking for their help rather than saying, hey, I need you to do this differently, because that mostly places blame. Like, I think making it sound like you're taking it completely on yourself. Like, hey, I really need to work on my mental health right now, and I really need to do some things to put myself first. Would you be willing to help me with this? And then if they're willing to help, saying, okay, these are the 3 things that I thought that I can do, and not saying, I need you to do this so I can do this, but saying, like, I need one night to myself each week to run my errands or get the things done that I don't feel like I can get done when the kids are home. What night would work for you? Is there a night that I could take for myself, or something in that way, to make it where it's a completely, like, it's not a demanding, it's not a, because I think that's when it can come across as like blaming, and just saying, hey, I really need this. Would you be willing to help? And then this is what I'm trying to do. How could we make this work? And working at it as a team. And I think the same thing for, like, if you're going into it looking for more time for your marriage, like, I miss going on date nights. Do you remember when we went on that fun date night, like, and kind of reminisce, like, when we were dating or after we first had the kids? Or do you remember that fun overnighter we went on? Like, I want to do something like that again. And just making it like a positive, kind of like you talked about earlier, making it a positive thing where it's not like, we don't date each other nearly enough, or you never hold my hand anymore. And I'm guilty of doing that, and I should be better. I'm guilty of doing that when I've been frustrated in situations. But really thinking about it and coming at it with a, like, what do you feel is lacking, and what do you feel like you would really want? And really thinking about it ahead of time rather than just like working through it in the moment, because I think that's when we get a lot of the blaming and like not putting our thoughts together completely, if that makes sense, to where it can cause more issues than it solves. And so just going into it like that, like, remember when we used to like laugh together over stupid jokes every day? We should start sending each other jokes through texting, or even not even approaching it like that. Just starting to do those things like, oh, hey, I planned a date. Will you go on a date with me this week? I got the babysitter and everything, and plan a date that is something you guys used to enjoy together. I planned a date once where we went to Top Golf. I think a lot of people are familiar with Top Golf. It's like where you hit the balls, you know, it's like a driving range. I'm like, not even a putting green. That's not what it's called, a driving range. But it's like multi-level, and it's a game. It's like bowling for golf. And golf is my husband's favorite thing. And so we try and go once a year. And every time I plan that I don't know what sport I'm doing anymore. Anytime I plan that Top Golf date, I love to just like watch him, and he just has like the most genuine smile on his face the whole time, and we just have so much fun. And just planning something that I know he'll love, not just like, oh, hey, I really wanted to go see this musical. Like, he's into going to see musicals with me, but I know he enjoys date night a lot more when we're doing that thing that he loves. So I think not even asking your spouse, just starting to do those things, or saying, hey, I want to go out with the girls one night this month, or I want to go take myself to dinner and a movie. What do you want to do? My husband goes out with his guy friends. They go to like $5 Tuesday movies or something, and go see a movie. And so I don't feel quite as bad like planning my time or whatever. And so making it like a fair trade, just making it so he doesn't feel like he's getting the short end of the stick, or like making sure he knows that he's helping you, and not just that you're like demanding things of him.
I heard you say something about taking yourself out on a date, and I want to hear you talk about more. I want to hear you talk a little bit more about that. That sounds interesting and fun.
Yeah, so I just started, and I think people, this is like an out of their box, out of their comfort zone situation sometimes. It started with like, I would just say, this is my night, I'm ordering takeout. Do you want takeout? I'm watching a movie down here or upstairs, and he would go watch his own show. So it started being like a separate at-home date nights with ourselves. And so we would each have our own food, and we'd be in 2 separate areas of the house, and he'd be watching his whatever show he wanted to watch, and I would watch my cheesy chick flick that he would never watch with me.
Yes.
And then I started branching out more. So like, I would drop my kids off at school and go take myself on a lunch date. or and sometimes I would just sit and scroll social media. Sometimes I would read a book, go see a movie by myself. And so I've just started trying to do things, and a lot of times I'll take friends with me. But sometimes there's not those people who like doing like those things that I enjoy, like going to see that weird movie, or I just really want to go do this. And so I think there's like something powerful in like being able to do something yourself. And I think that's come from becoming more confident in myself over the last year and a half, as I've like grown to know myself better and like really embraced who I am and feel like my real self. That I'm totally comfortable going and walking around the mall by myself, and or going and walking Target and just window shopping for all the things I want while I like enjoy a treat. Or it's just a fun like me time thing where I can just have time to myself. My favorite, this is going to sound really lame, my favorite date to take myself on is grocery shopping. And I'll pull up podcasts that I like, and I will make like an hour of grocery shopping. And it's like 9:00 at night, and like hardly anyone else is in the store, and it's like a vacation. Like just wandering through the store, doing my grocery shopping. More things usually end up in my cart than I planned on, but it's part of my date, right? So just doing something with yourself, spending time with yourself, being comfortable being with yourself. And I think it was like when I was in high school, or like when I was single after college, and I would like have the Saturday nights when I didn't have anything planned, and that's like, I'm so lame. I was watching a chick flick in my pajamas and painting my toenails and eating takeout. And I'm like, man, that sounds so awesome right now. Like, why didn't I love that more?
Yes.
And just embracing that time to yourself and being willing to take that time to yourself, to date yourself and like figure out who you are and what you love. So
I think I'm like grinning ear to ear about this because I want to do this. I do take time. Like I do go out for girls' nights. I do go out on dates with my husband sometimes. But I don't date myself, and there have been things that I have let go of since being married because Steve didn't like doing them. And it's not like he was like, that's dumb, you should stop. It was more just kind of the people pleaser in me, just thinking like, well, this isn't such a big important part of my personality. Like I don't need to do this, and there's other things I could be doing with him at this time. So I'll just not do that. Or like Steve doesn't like country music, so I stopped listening to country music, which is like a huge part of my growing up and life and stuff. And so I should take myself on a date, and wherever I'm going, I should listen to country music on the way.
You should take yourself on a drive and drink a shake. This is just what I thought.
Yes.
Turn on your favorite country music. Have your like dating myself playlist, and anytime you go out by yourself, that is your time to listen to country music.
This sounds so fun, and it almost sounds like something that would happen in a movie. Can you imagine yourself in a movie doing these things?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so, and I think a lot of people do that when they get married because we want to spend all our time together.
Yes.
We're like, oh, I'm just going to give that up because I know they won't want to do that. Like I'm never going to watch chick flicks because I don't like to watch chick flicks, and so you find that compromise. What movies will we watch? But I think, and like going to see that with your girlfriends is super fun, but being willing to like take a night and rent something from the Red Box that you didn't get to go see in theaters and watch it by yourself and say, hey, the basement's mine tonight. You can go do whatever you want everywhere else, but I'm dating myself. And I think, to be willing to do those things again, that it's okay to do them by yourself, and it's okay to take that time to yourself.
Okay, this is awesome. I'm going to do it. But my next question is, what about time? Like, it can feel like there is never enough time. So how can we carve out time for ourselves, for our spouses? Like, do you have any of your favorite tips for making more time for these things?
Yeah, so I wrote a post once about how I was so excited to graduate from college because I was going to have all this time back, that I wasn't going to be doing homework, I wasn't going to be going to classes, and it was going to be amazing. And then I graduated from college, and like all these things just filtered in to fill the gaps. And so I just like to say, like, you're never going to find the time to do things. You have to make it. And my biggest thing is just putting it on the calendar. And I saw a post somewhere recently where they said, like, every month you should schedule these into your time. And for me, that's like a night out with the girls every 2 months, a night to myself every month or every week. And things like that. A date with my kids once a month, a date with my husband every week. And those are the things that you legitimately have to put on the calendar. It's just like work. Like, it's going to happen every day, so you don't schedule any time over it. And once people have done date night every single Friday night for years, it's just like ingrained in their head, just like going to work every morning at 9 is. And they don't schedule anything over it because they know it's there. But when it's not a habit, and it's not something you do regularly, if you don't put it on the calendar, if you don't make the time for it and plan the time for it, you're going to put other things above it. And then I think the other thing is, once you've put it on there, don't let it go for anything. Because I think it can be so easy that it's like, a friend will be like, hey, we should get together and go to dinner. When can you do that? And you're like, well, my whole month is full. But if I gave up my date with myself, then I could do that. And so just saying this is a priority to me. And you don't have to be like, I can't do that this month because I'm dating myself. You don't have to tell them that. You can just say, hey, this month doesn't work for me, but what if we did such and such a time? So I think it's just, the whole thing about time is, and I think this is like a common thing that everyone knows, is that if it's important to you, you will find the time for it. And so for me, it's just been, I seriously put something on my calendar every single day for myself. And sometimes it's like a mega cleaning of my house, because nothing makes me feel better than like a clean house. That's so like, and sometimes it's, I drop the kids off at school and I'm going to go get myself a milkshake to enjoy while they're at school. Or I want to watch this chick flick that came out in the Redbox, so I'm planning a date with myself, take out in a movie. Or it's date night with my husband. Like, what are we doing this week for date night? And that's on the calendar. And so it's just making that time for yourself. And it can be something as simple as, tonight after the kids go to bed, rather than sitting and watching Netflix with my husband, I'm going to take a bath. And I guarantee that your husband's going to be like, sure, I don't know. My husband's like this. He's like, I'll go watch my own show, or I'll go do my own thing, So just being willing to put that in there and know what you want to do, and know that you want to make that a priority, and not being willing to put anything else above it.
Yeah, that's going to be a key factor, because like you said, I'm not in the habit of doing that yet. And I want to prioritize. And I love that you said, like, taking your kids on a date too, and not letting anything get in the way of, okay, no, it was on the calendar. We're going to do this. And so the kids have this stability. And also, so this is kind of a random thing to bring in, but my oldest daughter, she's 6 years old. And every time we say we're going out on a date, like, and we try and put them to bed, so whoever's coming to babysit them literally just has to sit on the couch and watch a movie and make sure the kids don't like get out of bed and burn the house down or whatever. They don't have to do anything. And so Kate's not even awake. My oldest, she won't even be awake, but if she even knows that we're going on a date, which is very rare for us to go without the kids, she will like start crying and she'll be all clingy. And I turned to Steve and I said recently, she should be so used to us going on a date that she does not cry about this. That she should know that this is just what happens, and it shouldn't be so novel that she's like, oh no, like, don't leave me. She should be totally used to this, and it's kind of sad that she's not.
Yeah. And I think it's just, I think kids are going to do that. And I talk about this a lot on my site and everything, and I have chapters in my book about it. Like, it's something that a lot of parents face, and we faced it for a while too, but we just found ways to make it fun for the kids too, or be something that they look forward to. Like, we're going to bring you back a treat or something and you'll get it in the morning, or find a way for them to look forward to it, but so that they start to see date night as like, they know that and I think even explaining to them, like, this is why it's important.
Before I ask you like the last couple of questions, is there anything that we didn't get to that you would like to add or you feel is important to say?
I think this is something I've talked about a lot, because this whole me time, prioritizing, balancing everything has been a big thing for me the last year and a half. And it's taken me a while to get to the point where, like, I plan a date or I plan a girls' night and I don't feel guilty leaving my husband and my kids at home, or I plan a date with myself and I don't feel guilty that I'm not hanging out with my husband, or I send them off while I clean the house and I don't feel guilty that I'm not going with them. Even if they ask me to. And that's happened last month, where they wanted to go up the mountains and I had so much to do, and I was in this point where I was just like so overwhelmed. And a year before that, I would have been like, yeah, let's just spontaneously go up in the mountains. And I was like, you know what? Why don't you take the kids and I will get all this stuff done. And then when you guys get home, we'll play a game. And so I kind of made it like a compromise, and to where I didn't feel quite as bad. And they kind of all were like, oh, you sure you don't want to come with us? And I'm like, yes, I really need to get this done. Like, I'll really feel better if I have this done. And so they all left, and I turned on my music. They even took the dog with them. So I was completely by myself, and I turned on my music and I cleaned the house, and they came home, and I was excited to see them. And I wasn't stressing about all the other things, where if I had gone with them the whole time, I don't think I would have enjoyed myself, because I would have been like, oh, I need to be doing all this stuff at home. There's all this stuff that hasn't gotten done because of everything else that's happened this week, you know? And so I think I would say that just do it, and continue to do it. And I've talked to people after I've talked to them about this who said like, oh, my neighbor offered to take my kids the other day, and usually I'd be like, oh no, they're fine. And she's like, I took her up on it and I felt kind of guilty because she had all my kids, and I just stayed home and vacuumed my house. And she said, I really felt guilty about it, but it was really so nice, and I'm going to do it more. And like, the more you do it, the less you're going to feel guilty about it. And you're just as important as your kids are, and making that time for you is just as important as it is to make time for your kids and your husband. And it can be hard sometimes. It can be hard because jobs are going to demand on you, and other people are going to demand on you, and other things are going to make you feel guilty for not putting them first. But you just have to be willing to say no, and stick to that, and be willing to put those things that you need to put first, so that you can live your best life, I think, is what I've realized. And you're going to feel guilty, but just remember how much better you are after the fact, and it's okay.
Yeah, because none of us, I'm willing to bet that none of us listening to this podcast are the type of person that if we let ourselves have a night to ourselves once a week or once a month, that like suddenly we're going to become these slobs who only ever want to hang out with ourselves, you know? Like, it's not like we're suddenly gonna, oh, this is so much fun, I'm not gonna do anything else ever again, you know? And I think we're worried like, oh, I feel guilty because, you know, maybe I'll just always want to do this. And it's not the case, you know? It's just a tiny break to refresh, rejuvenate, like you said, and then come back and be the mom that you want to be the wife that you want to be.
Yes, exactly.
I love that. This is gold, Amberly. This is pure gold. Thank you. So, okay, last two questions. First is, do you have any resources that you would recommend for those who want to dig deeper into this? Like, tell us about your book, tell us about your site and Instagram, and then other resources that you would personally recommend.
Yeah, so I have tons of articles on my site, especially from last year, where I wrote things about things I do daily for my own mental health. There's one about investing in myself, like why you should invest in yourself, that I think is a really valuable one that goes right along with this, and talks about how putting yourself first and putting your marriage first and putting, you know, your kids first, like making those things a priority, but being willing to invest in yourself, that you're worth it too. How that's really made a huge difference for me. And then I share things that I've learned and things that I'm doing over on my Instagram, like in real time. And I actually shared one just last week about how I wasn't loving myself anymore. Like, I looked in the mirror and I was just annoyed with myself, and I was like grumpy about it, and I didn't love who I saw, and like nothing changes other than what I'm doing. And I've talked about this before, that like I lost maybe like 5 pounds in like a year or whatever, but I loved who I saw in the mirror because I was investing in clothes that I felt good in. I was investing in time with myself. I was learning to love myself, and I was embracing who I was as a person, and seeing the good in myself. And so I talked about that last week on my Instagram, and just talked about how by loving myself first, it allows me to love the other people in my life so much better. So I always talk about stuff like that on my Instagram. And then where we were talking about like date night and your marriage and things like that, I wrote a book called Prioritizing Date Night in Your Marriage. because I do think date night is super important, and I think it's a really good way to connect with your spouse, whether it's just like a 10-minute date in the middle of the week where you go grab shakes together, or it's like a 4-hour date that you get to go do all the things you love. And so I wrote this whole book about, and it can work for dating yourself too, about finding that time and making that time and why it's important. And I have a whole chapter on tackling like the issue of babysitters and getting your kids to be on board with it and getting them to have fun. And then just like over 300 ideas that work for anyone who's on a budget or doing something for free or staying home or going out on the town or like only has a few minutes or anything like that. And I think it can work too for dating yourself. But I think if I had to say my favorite resources, I was thinking about this. I was like looking through my podcasts, and I think one of my favorite podcasts right now that like goes along with this way, and I've been listening to yours as well that I love, but the Rise Together podcast from Dave and Rachel Hollis, because they talk a lot about personal development and putting yourself first, and how choosing to do your own thing and choosing to make yourself better on your own, how that can affect your marriage and help your marriage even if your spouse isn't completely on board. I think that's one of my very favorite podcasts that I've been listening to, where they talk about this topic a lot. Yeah, I think that's what I'd suggest.
Perfect. And I will link all of these resources in the show notes. So if you'll send those over to me, the links for your articles and your book and things like that, I'll make sure that all of this is in the show notes, which is, if people are listening, they're like, what's the show notes? It's underneath the player in your podcast player. You scroll down underneath all the words below, that's the show notes. So all of these resources that Amberly's talking about will be there. Lastly is, how can finding balance in prioritizing ourselves and our marriage help us learn who we are, live true to who we want to be, and love ourselves better every day?
I think it's just kind of like how we talked about my Instagram post, that I started going back to basics of like taking time for myself, and going on a date with my husband and doing something that I love, and like treating myself well and not saying no to myself. Like, you go to the store and like, oh, that's such a cute outfit, I would love that. Nope, I gotta spend the money on my kids' clothes. Like, why can't you have back to school clothes too? Like, being willing to like love yourself as much as you love your family. If you're gonna buy new clothes for your family, then don't deprive yourself of new clothes. If you're gonna go buy, your kids Happy Meals for lunch, like, don't deprive yourself of a meal for, you know what I'm saying? Like, be willing to treat yourself just as well as you're treating those ones you love, and don't deprive yourself because you feel like you have to give them all of that as well. There's room for everyone to enjoy, does that make sense? Enjoy their lives, and it's only fair. And so I just know that, like, as I've put myself first, and as I've dated myself and done the things that I love again, and bought myself clothes that I really love wearing and that aren't just like mom friendly, for everyday wear, because I don't want my kids to ruin them, which, if I'm being honest, when I put those cute clothes on, I'm the one who spills on them, not my children. That's my own fault.
True.
But doing those things and like just telling my kids, hey, you guys go watch a show, I'm going to sit at the piano and sing for 10 minutes, and not feeling bad about it, or setting them outside and cleaning my house really quick, that I really love myself more. And I've grown to know who I am and embraced who I am, and I'm just able to be that better version of myself. And like I said, like, when I love myself, you can't love other people if you don't first love yourself. When I truly love myself, then I'm better able to love my husband and my kids and my family and my friends. And otherwise, if I don't enjoy being around myself, then they're not going to enjoy being around myself either. So I think it's just really important to do. And I know it's hard, and I know we can feel guilty, but like, we just got to step up and do it. And the more you do it, the more you're going to realize it's needed, and the less bad you're going to feel about it. So.
Amen. I love that. Okay. Amberly, I want to thank you so much for taking your time and preparing, and all the work that you have done up to this point, for all these women and all these marriages. I really appreciate it. And I know there are countless others who really appreciate it as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited about what you're doing. I think it's amazing. It's something I think is so important.
Okay, guys, how was that? I know, I sounded like I was underwater or something. I was actually just talking into a box the whole time because my dumb mic. Anyway, I am so grateful for Amberly and all the time and work she has put into this. She is definitely changing lives, and I know she's changed mine with this podcast episode. Love her, love it. Okay, for the pop challenge. The pop challenge for this week is to date yourself. Okay, she mentioned this in the interview, and I thought this was so cool. We can lose ourselves in our marriages and, in all the great things of life. We might forget about the fun little things that make us who we are. And so I want you to set time aside, at least 30 minutes somewhere this week for just you. You can go out, you can stay in, you can do it during nap time, whatever. Put your kids in front of the TV if you have to for 30 minutes so that you can do something that makes you happy, something that reconnects you with who you really are on the inside, okay? Date yourself this week and then make it a priority. Do it once a week at least, or maybe if you really can't, just once a month. Put it on the calendar, schedule time for you. I'm Lindsay Clyde. This is a Learn, Live, Love Yourself podcast. If this episode meant something to you, would you mind sharing it with a friend? Remember, if you want to get your no makeup freebie, learnliveloveyourself.com/no makeup. It's right there. Type in your email and it appears in your inbox like magic. Okay, see you next week, guys. Thanks. Love ya. Bye.